Hello, and welcome to my tiny theater. Today's topic of discussion for our pre-post show talks is going to be fat phobia and bullying. So within the play of Ithaca, those two topics intersect, and they are seen through the characters of the Lystragonians and Elyse from an external level, but then also the subject becomes integrated internally through some dialogue between Homer, which is a character that I kind of pinched the inspiration from Dante, and Nobody, which is my character. So, shall we get into it? It's important to note in discussing fat phobia that I am not that fat. And I say that because in the kind of fatness spectrum, I would be what's considered a small fat. Here's a graphic if you would like to take a look at that. And why fatness is a spectrum is because accessibility is a spectrum to those of different varying degrees of fatness. You should really listen to the voices of fatter folks as in addition to whatever you find from my discussion. In terms of my fat history, I've personally vacillated a lot on the scale of quote-unquote fatness and thinness. I spent most of my life as a medium fat, and then slid down to probably too thin for me, and then I am now where I am now, which I don't know what that is because your girl doesn't look at scales anymore. In terms of my history with fat phobia, I would say that began in my primary school years. With the girls in my grade, there was, the I Hate Fat Phoebe Club, which didn't do the best things for my mental health, for my social help within the group. It kind of left me feeling understandably totally ostracized and without friends in that school, which is quite a shame. In addition to the bullying from my peers, I was also being bullied in my domestic life, in my home life, by my bio dad, which you're gonna be seeing more of that in the next talk. Now, alongside the bullying from my peers, the bullying from my bio dad, I was experiencing at the same time a lot of medical health issues. So throughout kind of my childhood, I would go to the hospital a lot of different times for a lot of different things, different kind of like asthmatic, allergic reactions that no one really knew what anything was coming from, but it got pretty bad during my primary school days. And I experienced a lot of fear tactics from physicians along with all of the symptoms that I was already facing. At around like 13, 14 or something, I don't know what's going on with my body. Like puberty alone, honey, is tough. And I literally, my physician at the time sat me down and basically told me that I was fat and that I was going to die. Which also did not help the eating disorder behaviors that I was having. With that kind of mindset from physicians, I went through about 17 doctors in my lifetime, and I'm gonna get more into that on the chronic health side of things, but because I was fat, all that they chose to look at was that I was fat, and just, the whole eat less, exercise more toxic philosophy was pretty much all they said to me, so I was misdiagnosed for my whole life. In addition to the medical side of things, I also have some learning differences that are, not the hugest ones, but in advocating for accommodations for myself throughout high school, that was a lot harder because, fat and lazy in society's jargon are kind of synonyms. They already had a preconceived opinion of who I was as a person and a student based on my appearance and based on the fact that I missed a lot of school for my illnesses. What I learned from all of that in my youth was there's something desperately wrong with you because you're fat, and you should hate yourself because you're fat, and you're worthless because you're fat. And now, obviously, as this blaspheming individual that I am, I know that that's utter bullshit. But it took up a huge amount of space in my brain, in my life, and it affected the quality of all my friendships and everything. In addition to the kind of mental health challenges of hating myself that were brought about by society's treatment of me as a fat individual, I had another big problem with my weight personally, because I have always, since, age 7, wanted to be an actor, wanted to be in the entertainment industry, and I didn't see a single person in the entertainment industry who was fat like me, who was playing the kind of roles that I wanted to play. I'm not interested in the fat funny friend stereotype. And because theater and acting and the performing arts and entertainment have literally been, it sounds hyperbolic, but they've literally been my main purpose for survival for, throughout my whole life, I didn't want to risk that by being fat. I didn't want to compromise my ability to get a role, to move forward with my career, and so that obviously led to more destructive behaviors for myself, which brings me to diets and diet culture, and especially medically prescribed diet culture, which I think is beautiful that right now in society, in the media, on the internet and everything, there's like all these movements where like, oh, diet culture's toxic, we hate diet culture. That didn't exist when I was a wee lamb, and so I was put on every single diet probably known to man. Not to mention the fact that I was 100% in denial about having multiple kinds of eating disorders. And all of this went up through into university when, at my most extreme, I was on this medically prescribed diet where I injected myself every single day with hormones and ate 500 calories a day for months. And that was pretty goddamn brutal. But I thought at the time that it was normal because in my head, that's all I knew. And I ended up doing that multiple times throughout my university degree in the summers, before doing a role for school, because that was literally the only way that I could get my body to maintain the standard of thinness that I wanted. As we now know, more publicly, more openly, dieting is a really bad self-perpetuating cycle and an industry. And dieting, especially on the scale that I was, really fucks up your body, because your body will basically go into starvation mode. After your diet, you'll gain the weight back every single time. I can attest to that. And it messes with your hormones, it messes with all the kind of normative cycles in your body, because your body is friggin' stressed out that you're starving the crap out of it, and then naturally, of course, it will hold on to everything that you eat forevermore. But what's also really important to know about dieting is it doesn't change anything mentally. When at my thinnest, I'd lost about 100 pounds, a little over 100 pounds, and I still thought that I was fat. I still hated myself. I look on pictures and I'm like, honey, you don't look okay. You don't look healthy. This is not right. This is way too much. But my point in saying that is that I thought that dieting, I thought that being thin would be kind of the cure-all answer that my physicians throughout my whole life had promised me for self-love, for self-acceptance, for even body neutrality. But I have found that it is 100% not. So, where am I today with all of this? Today, I'm happy to report that I'm in a great fucking place with all of this, which is so lucky. I've found intuitive eating books, I found health at every size books, I have a really good physician now who is working with me to make sure that, first and foremost, my body is happy, my body can work really well, and that the first priority is not any longer like what society would like my body to look like, or even sometimes what I would like my body to look like, but what is best for my body to run the way that it should be working. And I think along with that, I say I'm in this great, fabulous place, which most of the time I am, but something that is going to be probably throughout my whole life is constantly checking myself on my inner fat phobia, working on not being mean to myself, working on checking myself on any disordered eating behaviors, because those don't go away. Most of the time, I really like myself. I think I'm pretty fine and dandy. I think that in that journey of self-love or body neutrality sometimes, or whatever you want to call it, the way that's helped me, and that's been my window into, you know, seeing my body with acceptance, with love, with, you know, in a good light, is again through art. In my self-love journey, I have modeled lingerie in a fashion show, body positive fashion show. I have taken a bunch of nudes with different photographers. I have sat for life drawing classes, and all of this is not to say, ooh, look at me, I'm like fresh to death. It's more of my way of finding tools to be able to look at myself in a different light, to make myself see my body in the way that I would like bodies like mine to be seen and represented in the media, in culture. But basically, why fat phobia and why understanding fat phobia is so important is because it's a huge issue that's systemic in, you know, all of society. So these facts are going to be coming from Sofie Hagen's book, Happy Fat, which was totally transformational to me. I absolutely loved it. I think anyone who is fat or has fat friends in their lives should get it, should read it, should love it. It was so validating, so affirming, so transformational for me because I didn't have any positive fat influences growing up. And having Sofie there as a figure is so amazing. The other portion of my facts are going to be from Sabrina String's book, Fearing the Black Body, which is probably one of the smartest things that I've read in a long time, and was so interesting, especially how she charts experiences of like fatness and blackness throughout art history, throughout social movements, and like, look, it took me a hot minute to read because it's so smart, but it had so many great points that I would have not had the exposure to had I not read it. So read that book. It's freaking amazing, and the art history references are prime. So some fat phobia facts. So this is via Happy Fat. The Department of Psychiatry at the University of Florida has published a study that says out of a group of formerly fat people, 89% would choose going blind over being fat. And again, the majority would choose also to be deaf, dyslexic, diabetic, or have a leg amputated, or have heart disease, or have painful acne instead of being fat. And in complement to that, the Red Center for Food Policy and Obesity at Yale has published a study that states that almost 50% of people have said that they would give up a year of their life rather than be fat. And see, to me, coming from, you know, a person who used to be a medium fat and is now just a small fat, I understand where they're coming from. And it's not because it sucks being fat, it's because it sucks how people treat you when you're fat. There are less opportunities for people when they're fat. It is legal to discriminate against people for being fat. Fat people are paid less, hired less, and you can legally fire someone for being fat. And all of these discriminations and oppressive behaviors that are systemic within our society, it's legal. All of these behaviors obviously take a toll on everyone's mental health, emotional health, and increasingly physical health. Which brings me to the fact that fat does not necessarily mean unhealthy. Fatness is such a poor indicator of how healthy someone is, in the same way that thinness is a poor indicator of how healthy someone is. Health is determined based on lifestyle. Are you eating well? Are you moving in a way that makes you happy? Are you hydrated? Are you getting enough sleep? Do you feel emotionally happy? Do you have joy in your life? Are you working with purpose? None of those things are, too heavily impacted by being fat. In fact, fat people are increasingly unhealthy because doctors will ignore their symptoms, misdiagnose them, and treat them poorly because of their weight, because of bias, because of stigma. Doctors will be emotionally and verbally abusive to their patients who are fat, and in some cases even refuse to touch them because of their weight. People will use health as an excuse for discrimination towards fat people, when in reality, even if a fat person is unhealthy, it's no one's business but their own. One more time for the people in the back. Other people's health is none of your business. And fat people should be treated equally to thin people regardless of health. And of course, fat phobia affects different groups of people differently. Fat phobia is actually an offshoot of racism, which you can read a lot about in Sabrina Strings' book, which I've already said, friggin' fabulous. A short quote that she writes is that fat phobia has been used to craft and legitimate race, sex, and class hierarchies. So, because of religious moralizing, because of the rise of the slave trade, because of sexism, because of national identity, and the stereotyping of externalized virtues and class, fat phobia has come to be a legitimizer of systemic oppression of so many different varieties. And one more quote that I really loved, that I'm pinching again from Sofie Hagen's book, is by actually Naomi Wolf from her book The Beauty Myth, which says, "A culture fixated on female thinness is not an obsession about female beauty, but an obsession about female obedience." So really, fat phobia is not about health. It's not about feeling good or being good or doing good or being virtuous. It's really about just oppression, fundamentally at its core. So there's another reason, if you didn't already have enough reason, to start really examining yourself and checking your own fat phobia, because it's a systemic thing, which means we all grew up in it, which means that probably everyone will have traces of it within their mindset, within their daily life. And that's just something that we should all be aware of. So how do we check our fat phobia? How do we work on this on an individual level? Well, for me, that can even be on the level of an interior monologue. So, for example, I've heard this a million times. I've said this a million times. I feel fat. Oh, I feel so fat. Oh, I feel fat today. Shall we unpack that statement? What are you actually feeling? Are you feeling irritated? Are you feeling bloated? Are you feeling hormonal? Are you feeling sad? Are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling tired? None of those things has anything to do with being fat. So it's a really great exercise for us to be able to think when we say, oh, I feel fat, and to re-examine our language, to re-examine our communication skills, and to think of a more accurate way of saying what's going on for us. In addition to the whole internal monologue work that you can do, you can also follow fat creators online and make sure to keep that intersectional, because of course there are, the size 12 white bopo girls in their little bikinis with like 2 tummy rolls, but you have to follow larger fats on the spectrum. You have to follow Black people who are fat. You have to follow LGBTQIA+ people who are fat, and really understand what the different levels of experience are for different communities. If I had some takeaways that I would love for you to remember from this video, is that fat and beautiful are not mutually exclusive. Fat and healthy are not mutually exclusive. It doesn't matter if you're size 2 Victoria's Secret model or you're a size 32 beautiful fat babe. I think that everyone deserves to feel happy in their body, to feel comfortable in their body, and to celebrate their body in whatever way that they want to. So that is my talk for the day on fat phobia and its implications in Ithaca and in my life. I hope that it was informative. I hope that it was interesting to you. I hope that you're excited to learn more about this topic, to check it out online. I've put together a list of most of my favorite fat people on Instagram, because that's the social media that I really like to use, but they're probably on lots of other social medias, so it could be a good starting point for you to find them. And then I've also put information about different books about fat phobia, different books about kind of the whole intuitive eating side of thing, the health at every size movement. I hope you find all this helpful, and I hope that you have a really beautiful time of day wherever you are. So I'll see you in talk 2.